For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and today we are looking at the fifth NSA-level Colombo Security Conclave that was hosted by the Maldives. Our expert tonight is Sathiya Moorthy. He is a distinguished fellow and head of the Chennai initiative with the Observer Research Foundation. Good evening, Mr. Moorthy.
Good evening.
Mr. Moorthy, I'm just going to start straight away with what India's NSA Ajit Doval had to say in his opening remarks, and I think they were pretty significant. This is what an excerpt from Mr. Doval's opening remark. Just having a problem with our technical issue. I'll request my producer to let me know when that soundbite is ready and can be taken. But extremely significant, Mr. Moorthy, that he's talking about a charter, about a roadmap, about institutionalization now of this conclave after Mauritius has been included in India's Quad. Mr. Moorthy?
Yes. Yes, yeah. It is very significant. Both as an institution, it's called the Colombo Security Conclave, it has been named, and the current attempts to institutionalize the various processes. That is to say, there is a message that we are going to be here to stay. That's a message from this session in particular. This is the fifth meeting of the NSA-level talks that commenced in 2011. And now, where we go from here is a question that they would have discussed and debated and decided upon this whole day today. And from there, it is going to be strengthened, as rightly pointed out, as India's Quad. Because let's say India has got two basic security concerns. On the north, it is the land-based issues. They are India-centric. But when it comes to the peninsula or the Indian Ocean, it is ocean-centric, where we are only one of the stakeholders. Yes, we are the biggest stakeholder, single largest stakeholder. As former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh pointed out, India has to be the net provider of the security in these parts. Yes. But these are all sovereign nations with sovereign powers, with specific security and defense-related concerns, geostrategic, geopolitical, all of them combined. So, taking it forward from there to here, over a period of 11 years, is not an easy job. But the time they have taken also shows that they are here, they are serious about it. They want to make it work and work it for a long time to come. So today's indication of NSA Doval's speech about institutionalization processes and all that have to be seen in that context. And that was also the way the other three NSAs from Sri Lanka, who is a current secretary of the conclave,
Defense.
Then from Mauritius, Mr. Lanka, and Maldives and Defense Minister, the host, Mariya, Didi, all of them spoke almost on the same lines. How to institutionalize, what are the areas of cooperation. Last year they included cyber security, which is a very modern thing. So, there we have to look at these things and see how we go as a region from here.
Sure. In fact, I think we can now just play out that excerpt from Mr. Doval's opening remarks.
Excellencies and distinguished delegates, a very good morning to all of you. I'm delighted to be here today for the first meeting of the NSAs after we agreed to expand the scope of trilateral cooperation under the Colombo Security Conclave. I would like to convey my gratitude to the government of Maldives and Her Excellency Dr. Mariya Didi, Minister of Defense of Maldives, for hosting the 5th NSA-level meeting of the Colombo Security Conclave. We thank you for your warm hospitality and excellent arrangements. I would also like to thank the Secretariat of the Colombo Security Conclave for the efficient coordination of various meetings and events with the participation of all members and observer states. The support of the government of Sri Lanka has been invaluable in this regard. In our meeting today, we have the opportunity to move forward in institutionalizing our cooperation with a concrete roadmap and a defined charter of objectives. I look forward to discussions on these matters with my esteemed counterparts during the course of the day.
He's been very specific there: concrete, roadmap, institutionalization, charter. On the ground, Mr. Moorthy, what do you visualize that meaning?
See, NSA Doval is very clear what he said, because there are 4 countries here with 2 observers, Seychelles and Bangladesh. Each of us have got different priorities. A lot of them are common to all of us. But there are also other priorities that each one don't want to step onto the other's shoes and make it not work. They need to make it work, and that is why they are here. For instance, take EU fishing, illegal fishing. That's a sensitive issue between India and Sri Lanka. That is one. In fact, I think in the opening remarks, Maldives Defense Minister made a pointed reference to that. Otherwise, they are mostly talking in terms of cooperation against drug smuggling, terrorism and radicalization. That is one of the 4 points they have flagged at the Deputy NSA's meeting last August and taken forward possibly to today's meeting. There is also cyber security and such other things, terrorism per se. And this is areas, technically they are supposed to be from non-traditional security areas, they are stepping into security areas. Terrorism is not a non-traditional security area as they may have visualized. I mean, the conclave objectives when they started off as 3 members in 2011, India, Sri Lanka and Maldives. So from here, we have to be, they have to be very careful in defining what they mean by it. There cannot be overlapping ambitions and demands or cutting each other at cross purposes that will lead to a disaster, which they don't want to do. This is the message I think NSA Doval was carrying from Delhi to the conclave. And going by what others NSA said, I think all of them was focused on these issues and also the need for it working on the ground.
Sure. Mr. Moorthy, you mentioned India, Sri Lanka, lots of issues there. You were talking about fishing, fishermen. India-Maldives, there have been issues in the past. There's the India Out campaign in the Maldives. Each of our neighbors looks at us as a big brother. Do you think plurilateral like this can put away if there are any differences or sensitive areas, because it's enlarged to a larger part? Even the Dosti exercises are not bilateral, they're with Sri Lanka and the Maldives.
Very true. Amitabh, you are very right. Because obviously the partners do not want this conclave to go the way of SARC. Their charter said, SARC charter said, they won't discuss bilateral issues. Ultimately, in the name of terrorism, it has stalled because it involved bilateral concerns. Again, there is always a real danger that this may also go that way. Only thing is, at this moment, no one is complaining of anyone else interfering in their internal affairs or cross-border terrorism, and all the areas in the last 12 years, they have recorded extreme cooperation in each of these areas. As the speakers in the opening conclave said this morning, all there was a lot of cooperation and between the original three members, because Mauritius is a new entrant and it is at the mouth of the Indian Ocean as far as this region is concerned. They have achieved a great deal in terms of controlling it, not being able to curb drugs smuggling. So these are areas I think they are going step by step. Going beyond that, if you take Mauritius and Seychelles, as I just now said, they are at the mouth of the Indian Ocean, and that gives a totally new perspective to the future possibilities as far as this conclave is concerned. And as you will recall, in 2020, when they met last time in Colombo and created the secretariat, they upgraded the characterization and agreement, original agreement from Maritime Security Agreement into Maritime and Security Arrangement or Agreement, which is saying a lot. That is where I see the future.
Right, and the future is now already including the Mauritius as a full member, Bangladesh and the Seychelles observers as of now. This is what the host nation's defense minister Mariya Didi said in her opening remarks.
Yes.
I'll just play that out, Mr. Moorthy.
Collaborate.
Yeah.
We are gathered here today to explore collaborative solutions for our shared challenges. Let me start by assuring you of His Excellency President Ibrahim Mohammed Saleh's commitment to the peace, security, and stability of our region. Although at an infant stage, Maldives views the Colombo Security Conclave as a meaningful construct to tackle many of the pressing challenges we face. I agree that no country's security predicament is an exact reflection of any other country. But I do believe there are numerous similarities and we can achieve a great deal together. Therefore, I am extremely delighted to acknowledge Mauritius's decision to accept the invitation extended in our fourth meeting in Colombo to become a member of the Colombo Security Conclave. We extend our warmest wishes to the government of Mauritius. We look forward to welcoming our partners, Bangladesh and Seychelles, represented here as observers, as members soon, so that our collaborative intentions, voices, and efforts could lead to larger positive outcomes for all of us.
Mr. Moorthy, as you pointed out, Mauritius, Seychelles, mouth of the Indian Ocean, West African coast, off the West African coast of Bangladesh, now Bay of Bengal. But in your analysis, how do countries in this Colombo Security Conclave look at external threats to themselves and external players vis-a-vis India in the region?
So I don't think they have got anything of concern as far as India is concerned when it comes to say, security threats from India. As they know, particularly Maldives and Sri Lanka, from the tsunami on at least, even earlier there were very clear indications, as in the case of Operation Cactus in 1988, right? When India sent a military support to clear out this thing, a coup attempt against
Good.
then President Mahmoud Abdul Gayoom. Possibly all these things today started there as a dosti exercise, bilateral exercise, biannual exercise between the Coast Guard of two nations, but mostly focusing on non-traditional security issues like oil
Yeah.
dumping or such other things, climate, all those things. But slowly but surely it has progressed to the present stage with more members, right? So,
Yeah.
and in doing so, at least I can say some of these regional powers are very clear and they understand their limitations. In fact, Minister Mariya Didi today morning indicated, mentioned that 97.5% of her nation is ocean territory. And given the limitations of resource limitation, including human resources, for in the case of Maldives, there is no way they could ensure the external security of the nation. Of course, internal security is also a great concern for all these nations, including India. But external security is also a threat for all these smaller nations, of which, yes, Sri Lanka has got an experience in handling the LTT terrorism and earlier JVP militancy. Bangladesh has got certain experience. But the militants and terrorists also upgrade their skills as states try to do so. So this kind of cooperation is very, very essential. In doing so, some of these nations, particularly Sri Lanka and Maldives, to begin with, concluded years ago that one, they cannot be masters of their external security environment. Two, in the post-Cold War era, when suddenly Indian Ocean region and Indian Ocean sea lanes of communication assumed disproportionately high degree of importance and criticality in global geostrategic discourses, they needed an external support, but it should not be a extra-regional support. I think that is where this entire concept seemed to have germinated.
Yeah. In fact, a question related to that for you, Mr. Moorthy, from Omkar Datpe. He says, are we seeing an emergence of two blocks, BIMSTEC for regional cooperation and development works in the East and the CSE focused on security matters? Is this the way India is looking to counter China?
See, we have to take China out of every discourse. This is what I meant. This is also what they possibly indicated by, say, outlining clear-cut charter and program, etc. See, for instance, individual nations will have individual priorities as far as Chinese investment, Chinese participation are all concerned. So, if you take Sri Lanka, to be frank, they have got an economic relationship with China. It works, it doesn't work, that is their problem. But from day one on, they have always been saying development funds from whoever has the money to give us, but security only with India. This step-by-step process of the Colombo Security Conclave and the location of the secretariat for the conclave at Colombo, and now a further expansion of the membership and more involved participation in meetings of the kind, both for public viewing and otherwise, shows that there are other concerns that these countries are going to look at. Not just China. China is India-centric security concern of the. Yes, none of them would want another extra-regional power, which is China again, coming here as a security threat or a security participant or partner. That goes without saying when this conclave was formed. And that is the underlying principle. Individual security concerns should not be brought in here, but all of us should share similar security concerns, which is basically non-extra-regional cooperation within this group of nations. See, at the end of the day, if you look at India's capacity and capacity of some of the other nations and the locational advantage they have, it is very clear that we can take care of our security. That is going to be the message of the conclave as a whole, whether they say it or not.
Another question for you, Mr. Moorthy, from Omkar Datpe. If small arrangements like the CSC take the lead on acting on problems in the Indian Ocean region, where does that leave forums like IORA?
See, these are totally different issues. This CSC is confined, as I said, from the mouth of the Indian Ocean to South Asia, and ends originally with India. Now it goes all the way to Bangladesh, because Bangladesh has got only that channel, Indian Ocean channel, to reach out to the outside world. So we should not confuse this with either BIMSTEC or IORA. This is a, you can say, maybe it was not every member nation has to agree to such suggestions. You can say it is a part of IORA in a way, but not all of them need to agree. I am not sure even about India's views on such constructs. India is
Right.
seeing
Again,
this as, I think, only as a standalone affair.
as a standalone
As you
affair.
said, you can at best call it India's squad loosely.
Yeah, that's true. Again, just your perspectives on Mauritius, Seychelles in the Western Indian Ocean region, the Maldives, you have the Laccadives, you have India's huge coastline, then you have the Andaman Nicobar Command, and then Bangladesh as well. Your perspective, holistic perspective, Mr. Moorthy, on that.
See, we have got so much area to secure, and we may, I think we have enough capacity and capability to secure them. So as I said earlier also, if you take the Southern Indian Ocean as we explained, there is enough this thing, territory and its interests that need to be covered, secured, and that is happening already. So take for instance, beyond this conclaves, CSS, there is, for instance, US military in the Diego Garcia Island. It is an extra-regional power, so it is not on for us to have it help us or interfere with us. And there may be difference of opinion between nations when it comes to either individual nations involved or the conclave per se involving US to the preference of China or some other nation. All those are very complicated issues. But from a purely minimalist Indian perspective, the presence of US military in Diego Garcia coupled with our IORA, in this conclave security from Mauritius, Seychelles to Bangladesh means that there is no scope or space for an outsider to enter these waters. And
China, you're saying?
unless there is a collaborator or a participant or a support state from these parts, which is what this conclave ensures there won't be for outsiders. That includes the US.
That's interesting that you brought up that point, because Jaideep Gadavi asked this question. How does the Maldives-US Defense Treaty, how is it looked at, especially the population in Maldives, now a small population in Maldives promoting India out?
That's an interesting question. Thank you. See, the Maldivian-American Defense Treaty was signed in the US, and no one in the Maldives is talking about it or against it. Those who are campaigning against India, campaigning for India vote or against India, never mention America in the same lines. For instance, immediately after this treaty was signed, then US Secretary of State visited Maldives. Was the first one to visit Maldives in about 20, 30 years. Yet, after he had left after a few hours of stay in Maldives, the opposition party PMC campaign issued a statement welcoming his visit. Right? So,
Right.
that's a totally different ball game. These are things in the context of conclave, possibly these nations do not want to discuss, because some other country may have a different view of defense cooperation with the US just now. But we are told, at least that is what the general understanding is from whatever is in the public domain, that it will only be a training program, capacity building, that kind of a thing.
If you want to wrap up your thoughts, Mr. Moorthy, in terms of how do you see what Mr. Doval was talking about in terms of a roadmap, institutionalization of the Colombo Security Conclave, in lieu of how China's PLAN is so aggressive in the Indian Ocean region as well?
Again, I want to underline the fact or the point that this has nothing to do with China. If we are going to start talking China here, which is a preoccupation of most members of the Indian strategic community, I think we have lost it. I think this conclave has lost its purpose. The idea is to create first some kind of a cooperation, understanding, and trust among the member nations. Trust is very important. That can bring in a lot of results that many people in India want. But that kind of anticipation or expectation cannot be put on the top. Then we expect them to work backward. That will only put the entire process backward. So that being the case, as you rightly referred to Mr. Doval's reference to roadmap, etc., these roadmaps also are confined only to the 4 areas that they have outlined in the Deputy NSS meeting last August. They are not talking beyond that. But as I mentioned, Mauritius and Seychelles are at the mouth of the Indian Ocean. Then India's MEA IOR division was expanded in 2019 to include Comoros, Madagascar, and French Reunion
Solomon.
Islands. These are totally different entities as of now. They are only in relation to foreign affairs relations, not security issues. But the Indian mission of the Indian Ocean in this part has expanded beyond Sri Lanka and Maldives, our old traditional partners and near neighbors. So there are possibilities for the future, but no one in the Colombo Conclave wants to guess or guesstimate the future and start working on it today. They, as I said in the beginning itself, from 2011 on, or even earlier, let's say 2 or 3 years before that, the idea had germinated. But they have taken time to reach here, step by step, knowing the pitfalls, the hidden pitfalls, and no one there seems wanting to fall into those pitfalls. So,
Pitfalls. Talking about pitfalls, Mr. Moorthy, I want to get your quick response to what Amkandi says. Are things like this, irrespective of which government comes into power? Because he asks what will happen to the security cooperation between India and Maldives, he or she, once, if Yamin comes to power later in the elections?
that is a good question, but that is a speculative question just now. For instance, there is a point here because when Mr. President Yamin was in power, for most of those 5 years from 2013, those kind of Coast Guard exercises or even in the conclave per se did not seem to have taken routes or could not be taken forward. There is always that concern, yes, but possibly in the future there may be a different perspective between nations. If you take, for instance, India-US relations, 20 years back, Indian perspective was different. So it may also change with the change of government, or there may not be a change of government. And after all of us are democracies, elected democracies. Governments change, but national perspective have to remain. And I
National
think
interests
Maldivians
don't.
also seem to understand and accept that, including
Mr.
Maldivian
Moorthy,
voters.
Mr. Moorthy, as Ravi Iyer says, very interesting analysis. Could get a good insight into this developing scenario in the region. On behalf of all StratNews global viewers, and there are almost 100,000 now subscribers, I thank you, Mr. Moorthy, for your experience and your expertise for sharing that.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, sir. And thank you to all our viewers. Get us quickly over that 100,000 subscriber mark. I'm also just putting up a link if you want to support us. This is, as some of our viewers point out, only a domestic link, a UPI link. But if you go onto our site, you can support us through other international payments as well. This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.